welcome to No Smoke, Just Vapor. I'm Asanda Goyi, your host for today. Today we are joined by Ms Veronica Malapane, who is the committee chair on the vaping product standards at the SABS. Ms Malapane, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, Asanda. I'm Veronica Malapane from the SABS, chairperson of SABS TC 2112 for vaping products.
Okay.
It's the committee that is responsible for developing all the standards that has to do with vape and vaping.
So the committee was created specifically for the vaping standards, this particular one.
This particular committee was developed especially for the vaping products, nothing else. In the SABS, we have different committees that cover different scopes. Yes. So you never really have an existing committee that will cover everything. Like, for example, we have tobacco products, but this committee does not even touch tobacco products.
So let's take a step back. I mean, people see the SABC logo on different products, you know, and most of them might not know what SABS is all about. Can you just paint a picture to make sure that we are all on the same page? What is SABS and why is it important?
Okay. The most important thing about the SABS is that it's an organization that was established under the DTIC government. The DTIC entrusted the SABS with the role of developing, maintaining and promoting South African national standards, and then together with that promoting the quality of the commodities of the products that we have. Further to that, the SABS offers conformity assessment services such as testing for all consumer products. It offers conformity services such as certification of products, verification, as well as inspections. So it's a broad scope. However, when you look at it, you see that it is a value chain. It starts with the development of South African national standards. After the development of the standard, you take that particular product that you have a standard for, you take it to our SABS laboratories, which they will test the product. And for you to get this logo that we're talking about, you have to now apply for certification. If they find that Asanda's product is compliant and to all the requirements in the given standard, they can issue you with an SABS logo.
Aha, that's where the logo comes in, because I think that's the one thing that jumps out when you think SABS.
Exactly.
You spoke about national standard. Can you just give us a broad overview of the process that one follows in developing a national standard? And then we'll come into specifically then the vaping standard. That's our discussion point.
Standards in particular are developed when we see that there is a need in industry. Like, for example, if you say that, okay, we are everyday drinking water, however, water is vital to human health or something, there is an identified need that we need to have a standard for this water that we are drinking. We need to know what this water that we are consuming must have. We need to know what they must not have. So that's where the need arises. And then you approach the SABS. Of course, there's a couple of steps that are going to be taken for us to develop the standard. It starts with establishing a committee. Committee is the people in the industry who will be using that particular product. So our technical committees, for example, will be your manufacturers of your products, your importers of the product, the general public, the people who use that product. So they come together as a technical committee to say, let's now draft the requirements that go into this document. Exactly. So now we're going to have experts on that very subject matter. Like, if you're going to be talking about chemicals, you're going to have experts that know about chemicals, that know about chemical reactions. And then that group of experts, they are called the working group. Now they have to agree on the requirements that must be followed so that this product can be deemed safe for use. Then the background stages is where you have your approvals, standards approvals committee agreeing that, yes, indeed, we need to develop this standard in South Africa. And then your technical committee approving that, okay, these are the requirements that we want for this particular standard. But then it doesn't end there. Once you are there, you have to now consult the public as a whole. Because remember, the standard is meant for South Africa.
Yes.
It's not meant for the organizations or the manufacturers. It's meant for the entire South Africa. So now we go to public inquiry stage to say, okay, this is the standard that we are proposing for this particular product. If you look at this document, do you agree with the contents that are in here? The public may as well say no at 1, 2, 3, and 4, or they might say good to go, we are good, we are happy with the document. We can now launch this as a South African national standard. Of course, once that is in place, manufacturers of such product are compelled to now comply to the requirements of that standard.
It's actually a very long process, and I think people don't understand or appreciate how much work it is. So let's talk about the vaping standard, SANS 2094. That is the first standard where vaping products are concerned in South Africa. Similar process was followed. So from your point of view, what was important about having that standard?
You know, I think it came when we saw that loads of South Africans have moved to vaping. We've been seeing that vaping is kind of like a fashion statement almost. People vape everywhere you go. But then not just that, we felt it has the potential of being unsafe. We thought, okay, it might be a safe alternative compared to other products that were already in the market. So to safeguard the nation and to ensure that these products are not at least as harmful as they could be, let us develop a national standard that will protect the users of this standard. So I think Vipasa is the one that approached the SABS to say, we see a gap here. There is this product that we feel it must have a South African national standard that it complies to. And then the SABS took it upon itself to find some industry experts that can constitute the committee. And then from there, we established a working group, and then that's how the standard came about. They drafted the document. Of course, we had to also look, are there standards in the world that cover this? We did find a couple, but then there was somehow a gap where we felt this does not actually address what we have in South Africa. There is international standards. However, we need our South African national standard that will also address our climate as South Africa.
And I think that's an important element, that oftentimes people think you need to reinvent the wheel, you know, but it's a matter, as I'm understanding you, with these particular ones, you looked at what's out there, but then localizing it to make sure that it's fit for purpose.
Exactly.
You spoke earlier about the importance, or once the working group has agreed on the standard, the consumers, the ones who will consume these products, will have a chance to have a say. The process ended on the 16th of July, where consumers had a chance to respond, and I'm assuming they responded. Where are we on that process as we speak today when it comes to the South African vaping standards?
Actually, Asanda, I have good news. We've managed to publish that SANS 2094. It's now a published standard out there. We didn't receive any comments. So after the 60-day period for the users of the standard and after the public inquiry stage, and then we don't receive any comments. We assume, actually, we feel we've given people sufficient time to engage the document so we can publish it, because nobody expressed any concerns or had any additions to make. However, it doesn't end there. If tomorrow a user feels like there's a requirement that is still needed, they approach the SABS. We can always amend the standard or revise the standard to ensure that it suits the needs of everybody in the country.
This should be good news to every consumer in South Africa. The fact that for the first time, South Africa has standards that govern vaping products. So I'm very happy about that. I mean, it's been a long time coming. And I think what people don't understand is you said it so eloquently, that it's about protecting consumers. It's about making sure that people know what it is that they are putting in their bodies. And this is a step in the right direction. Let's fast forward now and talk about how a company becomes compliant. You said earlier that these standards are voluntary. What does that mean exactly?
When we say standards are voluntary, we mean exactly that. It's up to a company to say, I'm going to comply with the standard or I'm not.
Okay.
But we must know that the content of the standard is of utmost importance here. So this is a standard, for example, the 2094 is the standards that affect a safety.
Yeah.
It affects human life. It's an important standard, and you may never know what may happen to the person consuming a product. So it may be up to you as a company not to comply with the standard. However, if at some point the regulators make this standard compulsory, it means you will not be able to sell your product if it doesn't comply to this. However, it doesn't even end there, Asanda. We have the National Consumer Protection Act.
Yeah.
In Section 55, 2B, it says every consumer has a right to a good, safe, good quality product. And then that product must comply. The Consumer Protection Act, it says the product must comply to a South African national standard if it is available.
Yeah.
So even if we can say our South African national standards are voluntary, must remember the Consumer Protection Act is the law. So if you're going to sell Asanda a product, you had better make sure that it complies to this standard, because the Act says if the standard is there, your product must comply to that standard.
I'm very happy you emphasize that, because I think oftentimes people mislead themselves when they look at the word voluntary, and they feel like I've got the prerogative. You know, if I want to, I can do it. If I don't want to. But what you are saying is that it's not a matter of wanting to or not. It's actually a must. You have to, if your concern is consumers. And in our space, you are selling vaping products to consumers. Therefore, one believes that you want to protect them. So in your experience, Ms. Veronica, how have you seen industry bodies get buy-in, from their broad industries when it comes to, yes, it's voluntary, but then we want you to comply? What are some of the things that you can share with the vaping industry that we can use to ensure that people comply?
I think most industries have to comply if they want to run their business legally and ethically. I mean, the SABS is there to ensure that we provide standards for a reason. We want our environment and everybody in general, we want people to be safe. We provide for the safety and for the quality of consumer products. So we would like to emphasize that whenever there's a national standard, for you to run your business ethically and legally, just comply to national standards. And I see an uptake of many industries. I mean, from your bar of soap, you might think it's not important to have an SABS logo on a bar of soap, but someone who understands what it means for that product to be tested, to be validated, to be deemed a quality product and a safe product, they will do the right thing and conform and comply to the standard.
And speaking of logos, so you, my understanding is that the moment the standard is published, it's effective immediately. And obviously, one would assume there is a grace period. If I'm not sure, you will explain to me. So, for example, if the standard says you can't have this ingredient, and before you had stocked products that had this ingredient, what do you then do? How do you have time to make sure you get rid of this? Are you expected to simply throw that away? How does it work in ensuring that we move the industry towards compliance?
Usually our standards are implemented and effective upon publication. However, we represent the industry. So the industry can come and say, look, we understand that this is the SABS standard. However, the industry needs time to adjust to it, to these requirements. We may need to implement this standard maybe in 2 years or so. But then if it's a matter of safety, unfortunately, the government has a lot to say on that.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, but for now, since the standard is there, the products are there, let's just hope that they don't cause harm.
Yes.
Because, yeah, if they do and the standard is available, unfortunately, the standard has been already active. It has been active since publication on the 19th of September.
And it's important. I mean, I understand completely, because we're talking about, as I said earlier, something that people are putting in their bodies. So we cannot take chances. It's just that sometimes from being realistic, so for example, a big issue in this particular standards is the nicotine content, what's a ceiling, where currently in the market you have products that are 50 milligrams nicotine, and the standard has a different number. So the question was more also on, what about then people who've stocked? So let's say you've spent millions with these products. Do you simply discard them and write it off as a loss? Just balancing those. And I think it's an important conversation that we can have at some point, because it really is, it's not a matter of switching the lights and everything is perfect.
And hopefully when we have that conversation, we'll also have the regulator here who's going to be specific to that particular point. Because as the SABS, we are not the regulator. So we cannot even give a directive that you must discard of all those because they don't meet the requirements of the standard. So we've said we don't have, our standards are voluntary, even though I have mentioned the Consumer Protection Act, but we cannot enforce any organization to come and follow our standard. The regulators have their prerogative to do that.
And speaking of the regulators, obviously you collaborate with other bodies. How do you go about that? I mean, in this particular one, I'm thinking the likes of NRCS, are there other bodies, and what's that symbiotic relationship that you have to ensure that overall protection of consumers is at the core?
Initially when we have a request to develop any standard and we are told this has the potential to cause harm, this is a safety issue, we try to get the regulators on board in as much as possible. So starting from the invitation for these regulators to participate in our technical committees, we invite them to come and sit in our technical committees. We do know that sometimes it's impossible because of capacity issues, but as the SABS, we emphasize that in any standard that we develop and then it has a potential to be regulated, it's for a regulated product, we want to get the NRCS on board, we want to get the different government departments on board. But then it doesn't only stop with inviting them to technical committees. Even if they are not there in our technical committees, we ensure that once the document is gazetted, they are made aware that there's this standard that the SABS is developing. And most times we try to say when they draft their regulations, they must call upon our national standards in their regulations. So we try to, and we do have a good relationship with most government departments. So
that's quite important, so that people are not running in silos and doing their own thing. Just before we close, Ms. Malapane, tell me a bit about the SABS logo. You spoke about the testing, etc. If a vaping product wants to have the logo, what do they need to do? What's next now to getting that logo on their products?
The first thing is to come to the SABS. Yes, you approach us, you apply for a certification mark. But then for that to be done, like I said, you don't just bring your product and say, hey, it complies to this. There's got to be a testing which is done by the SABS, not by you as the manufacturer. You cannot bring your test report and say, look, I've tested, here's my test report, give me a mark. The SABS has got to run the test your products. There has to be a surveillance audit whereby our certification auditors will be coming to your establishment to get samples of your product and then to test. And then the surveillance audit doesn't mean again you're gonna give the SABS to say this is my 3 products, go and test them, and they have to come and select from your batches randomly from your batches to make sure that indeed what you are manufacturing is what you are selling to the people. And then once your tests have passed, then they can issue with an SABS mark.
There's still a long way then for
There's still a long way.
Yeah.
However, if there's a lab that is accredited to do the test, which I will check in the SABS if we have that lab that is accredited. But then even if we don't, we subcontract labs that can do this test. As long as that laboratory is SANAS accredited, we can subcontract, they'll do the test together with an SABS official, of course, and then And the process for certification, I mean, it's outlined, it's there. There are many products that are being certified. So it's only a matter of running the test on the products. It's not that it's that much of a long way to go.
Yes. And I guess we'll leave it there, Ms Malapane. I think it's baby steps. That's what I'm understanding, that at the end of the day, if as an industry body, you want to comply, you want to ensure that consumers are of the most importance in the decisions that you make, then you will do the right thing. We're very happy, as I've said earlier, that South Africa finally has vaping standards, and consumers should be happy. And I think vaping businesses in South Africa should take this news as the best thing that could have ever happened to them in terms of professionalizing their businesses. We will make sure that we know what is in those standards. This is to educate everyone out there on what it is, what's in these standards, to make sure that collectively we protect consumers in South Africa and make sure that vaping products are of the highest quality. Until next time, thank you for joining us, and goodbye.